Hello! Welcome back to my series where I make something cool every week and make a video about it. This is week 2, and this week I made a bullet hell game level in the Godot game engine. The thing I really like about Godot is how modular it is. So I find it much easier when building a game to think of it in terms of its individual components instead of going for the whole thing at once. So I started off by making a basic list of things to implement. The goal here is to basically build a framework for a bullet hell system that can then be reused into making a full game. The first thing I added was a player character. Very simple, character body 2D. It can move up, down, left, right with the arrow keys. I also added a placeholder sprite 2D and collision shape 2D for the hitbox. That's about it for now. The enemy is built pretty much the same, just with a larger sprite and a larger hitbox, except the script is about to get complicated, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now the bullet, again very simple, no 2D, sprite 2D. I made the texture with a radial gradient, then I added a circular collision shape 2D, and this visible on-screen enabler which will emit a signal when the bullet goes off screen, at which point the bullet is deleted by the script. Bullet script is pretty simple. Variables for speed, direction, texture, and hitbox. The texture and hitbox are exported so I could edit them in the inspector. Also, I made this autoload script to store the player and enemy health points so that they can deal damage to each other. When the bullet collides with the player, it deals some damage and disappears. I've also got some print statements to check that it actually works. Now that the bullet node has been made, we can actually make the enemy shoot patterns. This is the bit where I have to do the maths. Really digging up that trigonometry knowledge I've got buried in here somewhere. Microsoft Paint! So, the bullet will be spawned in and move according to the direction it's been set. The direction is a vector 2D, so we need to turn this angle into a vector. Luckily this is fairly easy to do, we just resolve this into the horizontal and vertical components. So that's a sine theta and a cos theta. Since the radius is 1, because we'll just multiply that by the speed later, we can get rid of the a. So now it's just sine theta and cos theta. That was easy. Now to put this into the enemy's script, all the angles are in radians. So, theta is initially 0, that's the starting angle at which the first bullet is shot. Then we have the change in rotation, that angle gets added to theta every shot, and that will allow us to get these spirally patterns. Speed, that's just the speed of the bullet. Spawn points, that's how many bullets are shot at once, and step is the angle between each spawn point. Then there's variables for the texture and the hitbox, so we can make different kinds of bullets. This coordinates variable stores where on the screen the enemy is moving to, and the move speed is how fast the enemy is moving. Also at the top I've got a variable to store the bullet scene to easily make instances of it. Alright, spawn bullet function. Angle is the current value of theta. Theta gets incremented by the change in rotation. Calculate the horizontal and vertical components like we did in Paint, with the angles adjusted depending on the spawn point angles, make an instance of the bullet, set the initial position, direction, speed, texture, hitbox radius, and then it gets added to the scene. There's a cooldown timer that defines how long to wait between each shot, and when the cooldown timer times out, another bullet is shot. Nice! And when we change the values in the inspector, the pattern changes, so now we can actually make different patterns. For a bit of inspiration, I decided to play a bit of Touhou project, Touhou 4 and 6. And I quickly realized that I suck at both of them. You know, I'm a final year game design student. Okay, moving on from that, I defined the different patterns in dictionaries in this autoload script so they can be easily accessed by the enemy script. There's also a timer for how long each pattern runs for. These patterns are executed in a sequence defined by this array, and the coordinates for the enemy to move around are defined in this array. Now to get the enemy to actually read these patterns. Set pattern function. Basically just set all those variables to the values in the dictionary, and then starts the pattern timer. When the pattern timer times out, it switches to the next pattern. I made it loop around to the first one when it reaches the last one. Now the bullet patterns are done, time to let the player shoot. The player has their own kind of bullet, and this one just moves straight upwards. Pretty much the same script as the enemy bullet, but it deals damage to the enemy instead of the player. Next I added a health bar for the player. Basically when the player's HP changes, it sends a signal to the health bar, which then displays the value accordingly. The enemy health bar works pretty much the same, but I made it a ring around the enemy instead of a bar. I've seen some newer Touhou games do this as well, thought it looked cool. Also now they can both die. So, there's a basic framework. I wanted to add some of my own sprites instead of these placeholders, and I already had a theme in mind. Basically it's this nightmare forest, and you play as this dream soldier, and he protects the dream world from nightmare creatures, so you're shooting down this creature. I might actually make this full game at some point. So this is what the finished result looks like. I'm pretty happy with that actually. I think making these small game systems is great practice for bigger projects. Anyways, let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions for more game projects or just different projects in general, let me know in the comments. Subscribe to see more from this series, and thank you for watching. See ya!